Hey everyone, this is John Garofano from Reactive Training Systems. I'm here today to talk to you about how to create long-term success in your powerlifting career. Now, in our last video, we talked a bit about how to overcome a bad meet. Peter talked to us about how important it is to reframe our experiences and to learn from them. And he gave this really awesome quote: "Your environment is not reality. Your perspective of the environment is your reality." And I think that that's an important one to refocus on from time to time, and we'll come back to that today. Adam Jones talked with us about really getting at the root cause of why we had the bad meet, asking ourselves the question, why? And then Ross Lepola talked to us about the importance of reassessing our goals and making sure that they're actionable things that are really within our control. Now, once you've been competing for a while, it's important from time to time to reflect on your athletic journey and to uncover what your outcome and process-oriented goals are. An outcome-oriented goal is really, truly your results. It's the results of your training, and we'll get more into that. Process-oriented goals is more about how you approach things, your mindset, and all of the things that are baked into your athletic journey. Once you have identified both your process and your outcome-oriented goals, it's important to do a needs assessment and to think about what your needs are so that you can identify the things that you need to keep doing to be successful in your powerlifting career. All right, let's start off and talk about what an outcome-oriented goal is. An outcome-oriented goal is really why we're all here. It's why any of us get into sports in the first place. It's about our performance. It's about our results. So when we think about doing a development block and then peaking into competition, it's what are the results of the training that I did? How many kilos did I put on my total? How much did my squat, bench, and deadlift go up? But it's also placement. When we think about our performance at powerlifting meets, where are we placing among our competitors? What records did we achieve? And that can be at the state, national, international level. And it's also thinking about our opportunities to potentially compete at higher meets. So whether that's a regional meet, a national meet, an international meet, when we think about outcomes, it's truly the reason why all of us have gravitated toward the sport of powerlifting. It's how much did we put on our total? How did we grow that total over time? And how do we get more competitive in our career? The thing about outcome-oriented goals are, while they are important, if we fail to achieve them for whatever reason, whether that's through injury, sickness, life stuff going on, it can be very demotivating. And so outcome-oriented goals, they're important. It's what gets us up in the morning. It's what drives us to get under the bar again, but they can't be the only thing bringing us back to the training session. We have to have what's called process-oriented goals because they are more sustainable and they're things that actually help develop our identity in this sport. Now, process-oriented goals are a little bit different. They focus on your actions, your behaviors, your mindset that you can adopt through your powerlifting journey rather than focusing specifically on the results. Instead of fixating on achievements, numbers, or any type of external measurement of success, process-oriented goals help you think about process improvement, growth, and personal development. So let me give you a couple of examples of process-oriented goals and questions that you can ask. How do you want to show up on game day? So think about your mindset, your attitude. Think about the way you approach competition. How do you handle adversity? So when you do have a meet and you don't hit the numbers that you want to hit, how do you respond? What do you do when you have setbacks, you have challenges, you have injuries, or any type of obstacle? How do you handle hitting and not hitting lifts, personal records, placings, qualifying totals, maybe even missing invites to other meets? So think about your response to successes and failures. And how do you show up in training? What's your work ethic like? Are you skipping sets? Are you kind of having conversations with people and not taking seriously the training that you're doing? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have relationships and supports, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. And so think about your mindset, think about your work ethic. Speaking of people, how's the environment? Is your environment setting you up for success? Do you have a fostering, supportive environment, or is it one that detracts you from your training, from your performance? One of the things that is important when we think about process-oriented goals is it puts us in this perspective of self-reflection, where we can identify and gain insight into what it is that we need to strengthen our journey and what our weaknesses are. So for example, if you've identified that you get really nervous on game day and that's impacting your performance, what are some things that you can say to yourself that you can do to help calm your nerves? Maybe you need to get a game day coach that's helping you to work through that. That maybe you need to develop some mantras and that game day coach is working with you on those things. Maybe you've identified that you go into the gym and you are really talkative and your training time turns into 4 hours and you don't have enough time to get all your work in, which is impacting your rate of progress. Well, maybe there's some things that you can do to put sort of a lid on that. Maybe you could talk to your training partners and say, hey, listen, I've got to do, this and that, but how about afterward we go get a bite to eat, or we go drink a protein shake and we talk about our training, or whatever it is. This self-reflection is really important because it identifies areas of growth for you. One of the things that is important for every lifter to do in their journey is to do what's called a needs assessment. How do you want to change your training, your support, your environment, so that you can be the most competitive athlete that you can be over the course of your training career? Do you need help with tapering and peaking? Do you need help with your game day attempt selection? Do you need help with mindset? Do you need help with your nutrition plan? I can't tell you how many lifters spend so much time in the gym, they spend so much time preparing for a meet, putting together their attempt selection plan, and then they botch it the week leading into the meet by dropping a lot of weight and not being prepared on the day of the meet. So kind of thinking through those things. And one of the most important things that I think lifters can do is thinking about their support system. Do you have the right support system around you to be the most competitive version that you can be? Now, Ross Lepola in the next part of this video is going to talk to us about that, but I would encourage you to think through what are your outcome-oriented goals, what are your process-oriented goals, do a needs assessment, and start chipping away at the things that you need to be the most competitive version of you and to sustain that in your powerlifting career.
Hey there, Coach Ross here. I want to talk about systems of support for your long-term success. No athlete goes out there and has a success over their career without different systems of support for them in the cultivation of their success along the way. At the end of the day, credit still goes to the athlete. No matter how great a plan is, it requires athlete execution and effort for that plan to be successful. Again, every athlete still needs a system of support. And there's a couple of different areas that support an athlete in the cultivation of their long-term success. We have environment, training partners, coaching, and personal. Those are the 4 areas that I want to talk about today. Environment. What's your training environment? What's your gym like? There's a lot of different people that train in a lot of different places. For example, I have a home gym. I can do whatever I want with this space. I can get whatever equipment I need. Only finances are a limitation. So I have a lot of things at my disposal to help me set up for success. But that environment also does have some other limitations. I train alone a lot, so I don't have very many training partners. Once in a while I do, but not very often. There's also your commercial gym. That affords you the plethora of lots of people around you, but it might not have very specific equipment for powerlifting. You probably don't have chains, you might not have bands or blocks or things of that nature that can be beneficial. But you have a lot of people there at your disposal that you can lean on and reach out to. And then there's, of course, powerlifting special gyms. That's a fantastic place to train if you have access to that. They'll usually have the specialized equipment that you might need to develop your strength levels. There's going to be like-minded people around that can support you, and that can be really powerful in terms of what a powerful training environment can do in terms of cultivating your success and supporting you along the way. So the environment is going to be a multitude of different things. A lot of people, the most important one really though of the environment is what equipment is at your disposal. That you don't need fancy calibrated kilo plates to get strong. You just need weight, you just need a barbell. But it does create some limitations. You might not be able to do pin squats. You might not be able to do middle pin bench press. If all you have is a combo rack, that can limit you. But if all you have is a power rack, then it's not the same as an ER rack or a combo rack rather. So those pieces of equipment can make a considerable difference in terms of the quality of your training, the content of your training, what exercises you have available to you and at your disposal. The next one is training partners, and that kind of plays into the environment as well because they're a critical part of that environment. But it's a little bit different, so I think it warrants talking about it in a different way. When we think about training partners, I like to think about it as more than just somebody that you go to the gym and hang out with. I think it's really important to have a training partner that supports the cultivation of your process and the execution of your process. So thinking about it, is it somebody that supports your execution of your training or somebody that pushes you to max out every day? Because that's probably not very supportive to the long-term development. That's very much ego lifting, and it can get us in trouble. A lot of times that pushes us away from the execution of the plan, and that's probably not very supportive. I don't consider like the hype bro gym lifter to be supportive. There's times and places where we need to be pushed, and that person might be of benefit to us, of cheering for us and pushing us to go beyond maybe what our limitation, a false limitation, might be. It can be a detraction though, if it's a thing of constant pushing us outside of the plan of execution. So understanding where that is. We have to be able to recognize the difference in the person, in the training partner, of who is who. Is this person helping me execute the training plan to a high degree of accuracy? Or is this person pushing me to turn my buy one at 8 into a buy one at 10? Because there's a big difference in those two types of people. And there's strengths and weaknesses to every tool. There's going to be strengths and weaknesses to each type of training partner as well. And it's up to us as lifters to be able to recognize that difference to set us up for long-term success. And when we move into coaching, that can be a critical, important part for an athlete's long-term success. I can't think of an athlete across any sport off the top of my head that has been wildly successful and recognized that was not surrounded by a team of competent coaches. Everyone has. Every great athlete has a team of great coaches around them. And that's the point. Like, you have to have talented people on both sides of that field, on both sides of that coin, supporting one another to really get to the highest possible level for each person. The coach can't get to their highest possible level of coaching without talented lifters. A talented lifter can't capture their full potential without a talented coach. It becomes, even though it's an individualized sport, there is a degree and aspect of teamship here. That's important because when we look at powerlifting, a lot of people always look at the program this, how many sets and reps did you do, what RP did you do, all that stuff. But it's more than just the program. It's more than just the administration and writing of the program. At RTS, we like to look at coaching through the lens of leadership, relationship, and creativity. One of the ways we can look at that, if we think about creativity that's the training program. Creatively problem solving to find what types of training suits you. Because how I train isn't going to be the same as how you train. And it can change over time. So coach needs to have some creative problem solving in order to write that highly effective individualized training. The relationship comes in really handy when we're looking at meet day coaching and handling. Knowing a person's personality can be vital to supporting them to a very successful meet, to helping them make their lifts and not miss them. We need to be able to know and understand one another to a certain degree to have that environment, to create that success, to create made lifts. That relationship goes a long ways in other ways too. Things that happen outside of the gym impact things that happen inside the gym. And if we have a strong relationship, we're going to be able to talk about those things so that we can take into account and consideration what they are and how impactful they might be. Our leadership aspect, as coaches, we need to be able to make leadership-based decisions. If it comes down to it, we need to be able to make the call of, oh, no, we're going to go with plan B, or no, plan A is not working, let's shift to plan B. We have to be able to make some of those calls. It can't always be all on the lifter. I think it's really important that we consider context of lifter perception, lifter feeling, what they think might be successful. But at the end of the day, the coach has to own the direction and lead and guide the lifter in the correct direction. And the last point for being successful long-term is personal. And what I mean by that is like ownership. We have to own this journey. When we own this journey, the biggest thing that's going to be beneficial for that is we have to have that ownership. Like I mentioned earlier, no matter how perfect the plan is, no matter how great the training program is that's written, it is up to athlete execution of that training plan that really determines how successful the outcome is. So we have to own that. We have to own the process of execution. We have to own the execution of the training program. We have to own our technique and how we organize that technique. It's going to feel different than it looks. There's all kinds of different aspects that's within our training that we really have to just own outright 100%. That's going to be huge in the quality of our training, in the success of our training. Another big thing in the personal lens is burnout. It's a grind. Like, we can grind PRs out for a really long time. And in the process, in that really long-term development, I'm talking like 10, 15, 20 years, there's gonna be time periods where PRs are far and few between. I'm 38 now. I started lifting when I was 12. There are definitely times where I gotta work really hard to get another PR. And if I didn't have strong footing and strong grounding to avoid that burnout, that journey would be real slow and lonely. How do I avoid burnout? For me, the biggest way to avoid that burnout is I have to have a reason to lift that's more than just a PR, more than just the next PR in any of the movements and any of the exercises. I often approach it in two different ways. I bring up the analogy to people, think about athletes from other sports. Let's take LeBron James, for example, being the NBA all-time leading scorer. It's a perfect example. If LeBron went out and he started his career and on game 1 he scored 1 point, and on game 2 he scored 2 points, and game 3 he scored 3 points, and his only focus his entire career was to score 1 more point each game out, he wouldn't last past his first season. After 82 games or whatever it is in a year, and he's trying to go to 83 and 84 and 85, man, he's gonna get so burnt out, he's not gonna wanna touch a basketball ever again in his life. We can't do that in powerlifting either. If we go out every meet always expecting, or go into every training session always expecting that we can put 1 more pound on the bar, that's gonna lead to a really miserable time with our training and with meets. Now, clearly we want to pack more weight on the bar. That's one of the reasons why we're out there working so hard, and we wanna work towards those PRs. That is still important. And we're gonna benefit from having reasons beyond the PR to train. I look at it as, we talk a lot about what is your why? Why do you lift? One of the big reasons why I continue to lift and continue to train so very hard, I'm learning skills every single session that set me up to be better for other areas in my life. Skills that not only help my training and help my lifting be better, but help other areas of my life be better. Those skills bleed over into all different kinds of areas of my life so that I can create and cultivate and contribute to greater experiences, not just in lifting. Those skills set me up in so many different areas. So I'm learning and expanding in a lot of different ways that are just my muscles. And I think that's really important. And another good one that I want to bring up and mention that I'll leave you with. Newton Chang, one of our lifters, talks about it, and I really like the way that he put it. He talks about how powerlifting really helps give him guardrails in life outside of powerlifting. Powerlifting has become something that's important to him, and he knows that in order to be successful on the platform, he has to do other things outside of the gym in a certain way that support that. Think about it like nutrition. If we want to have really good recovery, we need to eat really well. And that's something that Newton does. He values his nutrition, he values his recovery. That allows him to go out into the world and eat with health in mind, rather than just let it go and eat pizza every night for dinner or something along those lines. But it gives him some guide rails. It gives him some guidance into making really smart choices that, again, not only supports his powerlifting, but supports his life in other areas. And that is similar to the idea of cultivating those skills that support us in other areas in life. We're learning valuable things that support our powerlifting long-term and support our life long-term. I wish you all the success with your long-term endeavors with the sport of powerlifting and training in general.
So they want me to talk to you today about adopting a long-term view of your powerlifting career. And that's an apt section for me to talk about because I've been competing in the sport of powerlifting for over 20 years. There are juniors who are competing now who've been alive for less time than I've been competing in this sport. So I'm going to try to share with you some of the things I've learned along the way. Now, understand please that I'm a coach. I'm also a parent. And one of the things that has led me to is this effort to impart wisdom on others. And I know how difficult that can be. I know how tough it is to take any of that in. So I hope that you'll bear with me and at least hear me out on the things that I'm trying to share with you. Now, you've probably heard people say before that powerlifting is a marathon, not a sprint. What I take people to mean when they say that is that it takes a long time to develop sport mastery, and that is true. Now, originally I developed RPE to help speed up this process. Back in 2005 or 2006, I was coaching my university team. I had several people who were on that team who were quite a bit less experienced than I was, and I was trying to help them make decisions more in line with what a more experienced lifter might make, to help them notice the patterns that an experienced lifter would make. So RPE was one of the things to come out of that, and it does help speed up the process. One thing that I've learned over this time is that RPE is a tool for governing training. It's a shared language. It still requires the wisdom of decision making. We still have to pay attention. We still have to think critically about the decisions that we're facing, whether that is to add 5 more kilos or take off 5 kilos, whether that's to do an extra set or stick with the plan, or maybe have an extra rest day or so on. Things like RPE can be helpful in that decision making, but the decision itself requires attention, it requires context, and there's a lot that gets layered into that. It requires experience. So there's still a lot to learn, and that learning happens over a pretty significant period of time because it takes time to accumulate the reps, to accumulate the experience, and we want to learn the lessons as quickly as we can, in as few reps as we can. We want to extract what we can so we can make better training decisions. And a lot of these tools help us to do that, but it doesn't do it for us. We still have to pay attention. We still have to try to make good decisions. We still have to learn from our mistakes and apply this over a fairly long period of time. Lots of times when people talk about sport mastery, they think about technical mastery, and that's understandable. And technical mastery can serve as a good example for this as well. If we think about mastering technique in, say, the squat, that happens over a long period of time. Now, what do I mean by mastering the technique of the squat? There are several things that can look like. And I've talked before about self-organized technique. This is one of the things that I believe when it comes to helping lifters find an ideal technique. I try not to apply specific technical models because, frankly, technical models are wrong. There are significant individual differences, and we see that play out time and time again. Not all lifters at the top of the sport squat the same way. There are significant differences, and how do you go about finding those differences? Well, there's a process that you can go through. We call it self-organized technique, and it's not a process that's limited to just powerlifting. In fact, it permeates sport, really, but it's a process that doesn't get applied that much to barbell sports. We're still in a paradigm where we like to apply specific technical models. Your feet should be this far apart. You should look at this spot on the wall or the floor or the ceiling or whatever. It's not quite that simple. Training and technique has to be self-organized. As you go through the training process, you will learn things about techniques that work, techniques that don't work. Some of them are visible, like where do you put your hands on the bar or where do you put your feet on the floor. Some of them are less visible. How do you brace? Which muscles get tightened in which sequence? What are you doing with your feet? Over time, you make more and more of these insights, and you develop your own style, your own technique, the things that work for you. And they do converge around certain specific things like bracing, like generally bar placements that work better or grips that work better than others. And that stuff is great to learn from, but it has to be layered on to a fundamental process of self-experimentation and learning from that experience. Lots of people think that technical mastery is a lack of variability, that every rep looks the same. I would suggest to you that that is not technical mastery. That is a level of technical mastery maybe, but that's something that people achieve, honestly, within a few years of just practicing consistently. If you watch the true masters, people who've been doing this for a very long time, you will notice a certain elevation in the quality of their movements. a certain sameness in the reps despite variations in the reps. Now, what I mean by that is you will notice even if they place their feet in slightly different positions on the floor or they grip the bar slightly different, there is a sameness to the reps. They have accumulated enough reps to go beyond just making them all look the same, and they can control their position even when certain variables are changed. That's an important capability. As you progress, you may find yourself in a competition scenario where the floor is slightly uneven, or perhaps your knee hurts in certain positions, but a wider stance or a narrower stance makes it better. And being able to apply the lessons that you've learned in other techniques to the new technique speeds up the whole process. And that level of technical mastery, it just takes a while to develop it. It takes longer than it does to produce the sameness of movement. Now, these ideas are not limited to just technical mastery or just specifically technique. Sport mastery goes far beyond that. Now, we could apply it to several different training concepts. We could be talking about performing singles in training, or the regulation of training volume, or injury management, or rest intervals, or any number of various things. Again, there's a quality to the understanding that you get from staying with it for a long time. You understand what does a lifter gain from doing a pin squat or a front squat. You understand that with more granularity than you did at earlier stages in your career. Earlier on, you're going to understand it in just a lower resolution way. And as time goes on, you gain more experience, you gain more detail about what do each of these interventions actually do, and you can apply them with more deftness and more skill because you've gained that experience. Even if you're a good athlete and you pick up things quickly, it's still going to take a while for you to learn all the lessons that powerlifting has for you. My advice to you would be to find ways to make this fun, find ways to draw out some satisfaction from it. One of the ways that I like to do it, and I'm sure a lot of you like to do it as well, is to focus on personal bests, personal records, but not just limited to competition personal best in your 1RM. Of course, that's like the highest level. That's the cherry on top. That's the fundamental reason why we're here and what we're judging all of these things against. Did it actually improve my sport performance or not? But we have to be able to draw some satisfaction from other things as well. Personal bests in accessory movements or supplemental exercises, movements that are not the competition lifts. That has to be at least somewhat meaningful. Well, I suppose it doesn't have to be meaningful for you, but it's something that has made this whole training experience much more enjoyable for me. And for me to kept with it for 20 years, training wise, I've been at it for 26 years now. To keep up with it for that long, it has to give back. The further you go, the harder it gets to see personal bests in the competition 1RM. So being able to draw enjoyment out of other aspects of training is really, really important. Another thing that ties into is just more broadly training wins. PRs are obviously a kind of training win, but it doesn't have to be just limited to that. I like the idea of making some notes at the end of a training day on what things did I do well and what lessons did I learn. Perhaps one of the things that I did well was stopping the session when my hamstring started to hurt, and I didn't push it this time and suffer a more serious injury. Maybe one of the things that I learned was something about how I'm bracing in the bench press or where the bar placement needs to be on my chest. So paying attention to those things are great ways to find more qualitative wins and not solely rely on the quantitative. Something else I would encourage you to do is to refine your big goals, your core why, over a long period of time. I've been at this for a long time, and my core reason for why I'm doing it has definitely changed over time. Early on in my career, I was very focused on the competitive aspect, winning competitions specifically, and then I went through an injured period where I wasn't competing at all. At that point, my why shifted considerably, and it became more focused on trying to figure out the training puzzle. Then later, as I've started to go back to competing, my why has shifted again, but it's not back to where it was before. It's different now. I'm older, the sport has changed, and so my why has adjusted as well. Earlier in my career, that made me uncomfortable, but at this point, I've seen it happen and I'm much more okay with it. So I know my why right now, but I also know that whatever it is isn't going to be this way forever, and I'm okay with that. I would also encourage you to focus on factors that are within your control. This means not focusing quite so much on progress in terms of the movement of your competition 1RM. Obviously, that is a thing that needs to improve. That's the benchmark for your efforts. But that specifically is not the thing that's within your control. Executing the training well, making sure that you're focused, making sure that you're taking care of business outside of training, making sure that you're making good training decisions, that you are engaged in working with a good coach, if that happens to be your path, that you are engaged with your self-writing process, if you're self-coached, or so on. Those are things that are within your control. And of course, it's important to evaluate real progress and use that to make decisions. That will ultimately affect a lot of the decisions that you do control. But it's important to do that carefully with thought and context. The things that are within your control on a day-to-day basis is not really your 1RM. You put a weight on the bar and you perform to the maximum of your ability, and that is what it is. It's the decisions you make that are within your control, and it's best to put most of your focus on that. So when I hear people say that powerlifting is a marathon, not a sprint, these are the kinds of things that I think about, and this is why I think it's a really true statement. I think if you adopt this kind of long-term view of things, this focus on things that are within your control, this extraction of enjoyment from the process, then you can stay with it for a long time, and then it allows you to get to that level of sport mastery, and you get to see what your potential really is. Not just that, you'll have a good time while you do it. That's all I got for you guys. Just want to say thanks for watching. If you don't mind, please like and subscribe. It really does help our channel quite a bit. And again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.